What's up, guys and gals? Troy here, Quad Standard Labs. We are looking at the first set of production kits for our Chase FPV 6-inch multi-build versatile frame kit. And what I mean by that is the ability to build this in multiple layers in terms of where your arms are in relative position to the stack and or the main plates. We'll get to that in a minute, but you can choose to build this in a variety of ways, whether you want it to be a standard, motors on top of the arms, or a pusher with the motors on the bottom, even an X8. You also, again, will be able to move the arms into certain positions based on how you do the spacing for the arms. So the first part of this video is just going to be a quick walkthrough of the kit, explaining everything that comes in it. After that, we will do a more extended version that includes all of the items in the kit again, plus the actual build out. For the most part, you really should only need a 2mm and a 2.5mm. You will need obviously a 1.5 and a Phillips for your air unit and installing your FPV equipment. But for this build out, just of the frame, you only really need these two tools. There's no nuts. There's no nuts on this build in particular. One of the things that we did to make this unique to us in the way that QSL really wants to continue to build out frames is to add press nuts or riv nuts, whatever you call them, into the base plate that allows you to screw the main arm screws into those and not have to mess with nuts on the bottom of the frame. So everything will just screw right in and screw right out. The other screw holes are going to be standoffs, but there's only 4 of those. So the goal again of this frame was to be as stiff as possible, not as light as possible, and to provide a platform that's super versatile for doing all kinds of different shooting, whether it just be freestyle and fun flow stuff, all the way down to trying to track something as fast as possible, which would be a reason to do maybe a staggered arm configuration, right? So this is a full complete kit, so I'm going to run through things that are optional but you may or may not get with your kit, but I just wanted to run through them and show you. So top plate, it's the one with the big hole, no riv nuts, no press nuts, whatever. Bottom plate has press nuts, less holes in the bottom, more holes in the top. Battery pads, just while they're here, this is going to be for the battery landing plate, which is optional. This is something that we recommend, especially if you're going to do pusher configuration or X8. Anytime you're going to mount the motors on the lower part of the arm facing downward, you're probably going to want to put the battery on the bottom as well to act as a landing, kind of keep it off the ground and the motors off the ground. And so you may want this landing plate for that. You also can put a battery on the top plate. Again, however you plan to fly it, build it, and utilize it. So we have our top plate battery pad here. So that would go there, right? And then we have our bottom plate battery pad. It goes on the bottom side, obviously, but you can see here, bada bing, bada boom. We'll do it here too. Bada bing, bada boom. And again, you'll notice we did flathead or flush screw heads, so flat top screws, and all your hardware is going to be in the kit, obviously, but I just wanted to show that, especially in case you need to customize your stack for whatever stack you have. We do provide some stack hardware, and that stack hardware is going to be optional going forward. In these first kits, we forgot to kind of add the stack hardware in there. All kits will come with one set of screws, but none of the actual hardware for the separation or the nuts. So you will get a set of stack screws that are going to be 20mm. We also will provide some 22s and some 16s, especially with the first kits, but if you order the X8 kit, we'll go ahead and start providing the 16s. I'm sorry, there will be no 22s. I don't know why I said that. We will provide 16s to add the second stack, where you're just going to have a double stack with the 20s and then a 16s for a single stack. At any rate, let's dive in. We went through these parts. We've got our arms. So you've got 4 arms, and They have pockets for the motor mounts for the main motors. If you were to get the X8 kit and do an X8, you'll notice this is from Shin Drone's design. Andy did do the original conceptual, taking my conceptualization and putting it into some form. We then took it and made it our own, and with the consent of Andy and licensing out the original design. So at any rate, you will notice the X8 plates go on very similarly to thick, Sicario, all those other things. So you'll mount your arms, and then you'll have a plate to mount a second motor, and then you'll go ahead and mount that directly to the arm. But again, that hardware will come if you select that kit. We've also got 3D prints. These are our heatsink prints for, this is the air unit. I do want to make a couple of notes about these prints. This material is $250 a kilogram. It is also probably the hardest filament we've ever printed. Between all of the lightweight filaments and all the different things on all the different printers, it is difficult to get a nice, clean, perfect print. The prints that we're currently doing with them are the best we've ever achieved. You will find, when we're going to do our best to clean these up, these just came off, you will find some imperfections. I recommend leaving them as is. They're going to be inside the build. You're not going to see them. It is not going to take away from the functionality. We are adding additional ability to take heat and transfer it away from the air unit with these. And honestly, being that this is an open frame, they're really not necessary. It just came down to being the cleanest way to mount. So if you don't order the heat sinks, don't worry. The prints that we can provide, that we'll be providing files for, if you want to print them out of TPU, they will work just fine. They're not going to melt. Everything's great. But again, I would not try to really remove any imperfections you do see. The reason why is sometimes it is easy to tear the layers apart. For the most part, they are printed extremely nice. Now, there's one exception, and that is the inside of one half. Because we have to choose which side to print down, this side has to use supports, and even when we do our own built-in supports, there's always just, again, it's just so finicky. There's always a bad layer right there in between. You could rub some of this stuff off and get it a little bit, cleaner looking, but again, it's not a big deal. You're gonna actually sandwich the air unit or the O3 into this with this plate, or with this other one on top, and then the distance being just slightly less than 20 millimeters, it's gonna compress and it's gonna hold everything nice and tight. Yes, I'll admit it would be better if this was flush to transfer the heat, but at the end of the day, it is semi-flexible, and with that little bit of smush, it's going to come in contact enough. We've used these like this for literally 2.5, 3 years now. Never had issues with them. At any rate, I am testing some new methodology here, so I am going to try something. But for now, if you get them and they're a little funny on one side, don't worry. That's kind of natural. Again, the rest of the print should look pretty good, and you should be able to just kind of flick off any little bits, but I wouldn't go peeling and tearing off stuff really hard, because again, it could separate. So I'll show you these later. That's the heatsink prints. You'll also get whatever prints you ordered if you ordered them. We've got our GPS print. We've got our nose camera prints. We've got our SMA tabs here, right, that go on the arms. And then we have, this is going to be the SMA rear. This SMA rear can be mounted below, or it can be mounted on top of your GPS, however you're more comfortable having your GPS mount. If you don't have a GPS mount, you just throw them back there. So that was designed to kind of be a dual print that can kind of go together to make the tail however you want it. We've got this stack hardware. This stack hardware is actually the X8 stack hardware, though we will be providing with the first kits, like I said, these for your main stack. So every kit that goes out with the first batch is going to have these. Once we add that as an option, you'll be able to select them. They're not cheap, guys. Sorry, these are like 25 cents a piece. And then this is going to be, if you ordered an X8, the 16 mil stack to do the secondary stack however you'd like. We've got TPU printed feet here, because this kit is a complete kit and that goes on the battery landers. To install these, because we're going to go ahead and walk through this real quick, the part that is thicker, so the hole is offset, the part that's thicker goes down. So you'll put all of them with that facing down. You can just put them on like this and then bang them on a table is perfect, just straight up and down. And you'll hear that solid thud whenever they're all the way seated, and now that one's all the way seated. So that's the best way. Make sure they're all facing downward. The reason why there's offset right there is to provide room for the battery strap. If anybody has motor configurations that you need taller landing gear, let us know. We have a few different height sets that we could send you the files for. We'll probably put them on the Grab CAD as well. So that's that. And then because the fat side is the bottom, that's where you're going to put your battery pad, right? We're going to put it on this side, the side that is the short side of the print. So that's that. I've already done some installation. Nice. So next up, let's go ahead and take a look at the actual hardware kit that you're going to get, as well as the rest of the carbon. So your bag should be labeled, which will make it easy for assembly, hopefully, because they all really, though it looks difficult, this is actually a really simple frame to put together in the terms of the amount of parts. The spacers are different and a little tricky, but you have 6mm spacers. You should have 4 of those. You should have 4 of the 8mm spacers. And then the 3mm spacers, you're actually going to have 2 that are just spacers, 1, 2, and 2 that are not symmetrical, that are your SMA tabs for the holding of an SMA, or if you ever want to create some other kind of antenna holder or something else that you want to use these for, that's what they're for. These can be put into, again, different formations and different configurations. So you will have leftover spacers, and what I mean by that is every arm is going to get an 8mm. So you're going to use an 8mm spacer for everything. That's because the arms are 6mm. So that makes 14mm. So from here, we have to decide how we want the configuration and how we want to stagger it. If the rear ones typically are the ones that won't have the SMAs. If you're using the SMAs, the rear ones would then use a 6mm spacer. So now we've got 6 plus 8 is 14 plus 6 is 20. 20 is the stack height and the height of the standoffs, or not stack height, the height of the standoff. So it's the height of the total sandwich. So we're going to have one arm, like I said, with an 8mm, or 2 arms with an 8mm and a 6mm, and that's it. How I position those spacers doesn't matter. It just matters that you've got 20mm per arm. So for me, I'm going to do this one with the SMA tabs, but if I wanted to and just did not need those SMAs because I'm going to put the SMAs in the tail section, then I would use the leftover extra 6mm, because 2 times 3 equals 6. Something else you could do if you needed to is, what if you only need one SMA? That's fine. You could have one arm in the front, or a third arm with 8 and 6, and then you could do 8, 3, and 3. What you don't want to do is do 6 and 6 and 6, because you'll be 2mm short. At any rate, I'm going to take these 2 6s and set them over there. I'm going to take these arms here, and I'm going to put their 8mm spacers on them, and then, oh, these are upside down. Wait, yeah, upside down. All right, 8mm spacers, and then we'll also have our 3s and our 3s and our 3s and our 3s. Okay, so here comes the part about how you're going to build out the frame. Now, I'm going to tell you how to build the frame out also with the electronics kind of getting done, but I don't have the electronics to do, so you're going to do that yourself. But we are going to just show you kind of some tips and tricks and where everything goes. Standoffs, these, and your M3/8s, these over here, can go off to the side. Put them with your stack hardware for now. For now, well, not your stack hardware, we're actually going to do that, but we don't need those for now because they can go in at the very, very end. Same thing, if you have a GoPro tab from us that you got, an aluminum one or a printed one, you'll have a different bag with that. This aluminum one, CNC'd, does have some different screws that you need to use in place of the M3/8s. All right, so what we do need, we are going to need the M320s, 5 of them, so there's an extra piece in there for you. We tried to add extra screws here or there just because as we assemble it, I'll let you know, but there are at times some things to look out for and some things not to do. So we're gonna use 4 of these guys here, and I'm gonna get the standard stack hardware because that's all we're using. Now, you can decide how to build your stack a couple of different ways. If you want, you could build it on the top plate hanging down. I don't know, just if you wanted to. For most people, I think they're gonna build it centered up in the bottom, right? The other thing, by the way, that I did not bring is battery straps. You do need to probably insert your battery strap prior. You do get 4 different battery straps from us, 2 Kevlars and 2 standard battery straps. I would go ahead and run that middle one if you're going to use it, which you probably should. And in fact, I would say that's the only battery strap you need for the most part. We did add additional strap holes, but really that's for if you need to, for some reason, move the CG backwards and maybe you're using a small battery. This is meant to use like 2200 size batteries. You could probably go bigger too. So one center one, even if you're bottom mounting your battery, is honestly the easiest and best way to go about it. At any rate, choose where you want it. For a standard build, I would just say we're going to do it in the center. The rear, you would maybe do if you were doing an X8. I mean, you would do if you're doing an X8. And the choice there would be, do you want the double stack in the middle with 2 ESCs and a flight controller in the rear? Or do you want 1 ESC, 2 ESC, and a flight controller on one of those? I'll tell you, my personal preference would be to do the 2 ESCs in the middle and the flight controller in the rear. As you know, different as that technically sounds, I've had plenty of builds that fly that way, that the layout itself I think would be super, easy. There are also some mounts up front. These are going to be 25 by 25 M3 and 20 by 20 M2. That's going to be for like your walk snails, your vistas, mounting something in that area there. You could definitely do. And I guess you could do, if you, had a 20 by 20 flight controller, you could do that on the nose, but it's going to be in the way of your air unit. So really, I guess you couldn't do that. Sorry. Just blabbing here while we go through this. So I'm going to get these stack hardware in because, again, I'm going to show you what I would do to assemble and build this out if I was also doing the physical electronics portion. And the reason I'm saying that is it's not difficult, but it will require you to have your stack, and we're going to position the arms. From there, you would go ahead and do all of your electronics, right? So before we do that, there's something you can do to go ahead and make this easier. I am going to go ahead and get the M3s, and again, there's extras. I'm going to get 4 M3s, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to assemble this first. I'm just going to show you how I would do it to get everything lined up and ready. So let's say we're doing all motors up top. We want just a straight standard configuration and we want everything up top. I'm going to go ahead and push this screw through, being careful not to just jam it through the carbon, because if you gall or damage the threads here and then start to screw it into the riv nuts or press nuts, you could cause damage in terms of locking that screw up. So if at any point and you're screwing these screws into the base plate that you start to feel like it's starting to tighten up before it should, stop, back it out, and I would just change that screw out for one of the spares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just go ahead and drop this into position, and I'm just going to use this screw, and I'm not screwing tight, I'm just gently screwing that screw in. I could take the M4s and do the same thing, but basically this is going to lock my arm in place, ready to go to solder it up. Now in this situation, I would go ahead and have the motor mounted already. So I would have mounted the motor, not cut any wires until I get everything in position. Then I would position my stack and I would start to run everything I need to get to that space. So that's that. Let's see. So this is going to be the other rear one. So same thing. I'm going to take an M3 and I'm going to do one piece of carbon at a time, put it on there, and then put that here. Again, it's not going to matter if it moves just a little bit, so don't go ham on it. It's going to move around on you a little bit. Again, this is not going to be the most incredibly simple design, right? Or build out, but it's not difficult. We've done a couple of them already. Super, super simple. So here's where we need to do our 3mm spacer. So if I'm going to do here, oh, that's not the right one. We're going to do here the tab, because we're going to do the tabs on this build, on this, at least this demonstration. And so we've got arm, 3mm tab, and then 3mm nothing, right? And so we're going to do that again. We're going to take that screw, we're going to put it through all of our carbon, set it down. Oh, we forgot. I was like, that is deep. Now we need the 8mm. We got to make sure we get that 8mm in there. So 8.336, that's 866 is 20 millimeters. All right. So we've got that on there. And again, we're not tightening down super tight here, guys. These are still movable because I don't want to tighten things up and jam things up. The thing we got to do here is we got to make sure, oh, I put this arm is upside down. I was talking so much about the spacers that I did not do the arm correct. All right. There's that. And then arm, followed by 3mm with the tab, followed by 3mm, followed by 8mm. All right. So this is where, you know, you can see again, if you wanted to stagger these or position these in a different way, you're absolutely, it is up to you. Tuning will be, you know, different depending on how you build this thing out a little bit, but for the most part, we found that mostly the same tune will really run for anything. The staggered arm is going to be the one that you're really going to have a little bit more tuning to take care of, probably, if you're switching from one to the other. So that's that, right? So I've got the main arms on there. We did not obviously put the top plate yet because we want to be able to go ahead and install our electronics, which at this point, if I had arms on these things ready to go, I could drop in my ESC, get all the wires ran how I would like them, get them soldered in, get my flight controller, get it mounted with the rest of the stack hardware, which we provide 5mm spacers in between with these 2mm for the bottom and the top. Once again, we do provide one extra of each of those. I could get all my hardware there mounted up. I could get my, you know, flight controller where I wanted, all these things. And that's how we would get the main electronics buttoned up. Now, for the prints and all the rest, again, these prints can all go on after. If you're running your SMAs to your arms, you're going to want to run your air unit SMAs in these little slit, like in between the stack and the arms, and come out here. And then we would mount those to your 3D prints, which you could do ahead of time. And then once the frame was built out, you'll go ahead and screw those into these tabs, and you'll have SMAs on each side. If you're running them to the rear, I would go ahead and again run them and make sure they're hanging out the backside, maybe put them in the print. And then for the camera, you can go ahead and do that last. I would just recommend once we get it all buttoned up, you would have the air unit camera in the front. You could install these on each side, and then you could put these standoffs in them obviously beforehand, and then put these in place, and they should slide together. If you just loosen all of your arms up a little bit, the plates will have some play. So knowing all of that is how we would go about going, you know, getting the electronics wired up and ready. Let me show you how to put everything together, so to speak. So here we would have, again, our motor wires. Everything would be soldered up, so we'd have to kind of leave everything here. Have our stack and everything ready, wired, and in place. So have this off to the side, and we'd have that there. Always make sure to leave yourself motor wire room, guys. One of the worst things I see is people that cut their motor wires way too short. They cut them right to where they think they need them, and then it just makes for a not so clean build and difficulty in moving things around. I like to leave at least 10 to 20 millimeters of excess wire. Some people say it's messy, but for me, I think that it does a couple of things. It allows me more room and in getting things assembled. But something else is when people crash and the arms break and the motors fly off, you find less damage to the ESCs when you give a little bit of space. So you don't see as many ripped pads. So we have all of our spacers where they're going to go. We have everything, you know, again, in a perfect world, everything is ready to go. The stack is buttoned up. The air unit is plugged in and sitting here, which at that point we would go ahead and set the air unit down on its mount pad here, which for the base plate is blank. It's just blank on the bottom. There's nothing there. So you're just going to put it essentially just in a rough position where it goes. You would then be able to set your air unit. Let me grab one since I have one just sitting here. It just has antennas on it. So we would set our air unit, and this one has stuff on it, so it's going to be a little tricky. Right here, if you have the, you'll notice, by the way, antennas pointed down on this. There's some little like bottom cutout grooves, and that's one reason we did that, is to give you more space to run those wires nice and clean and low. So you would do that, and then we can go ahead and set this one on here just because we're going to need it, and it's going to be what locates and locks in that air unit. So once we get there, we're going to basically start with one motor at a time. And so we're going to take this top plate and we're going to start with one arm at a time. And again, we just got to go back to how we wanted them. So we've got 8, 6, and then arm. And so we would move that off to the side a little bit, get that arm positioned, and then drop in one of our screws, and make sure we hit that hole. Let's not tighten it too much. And now at this point, we're going to take that M4, because we don't want those arms swinging around now that we're going to be kind of moving things around as we go. So we'll take that M4. This is where, again, you want to make sure that first one is not too tight, and you don't want to jam this screw in there. You want to make sure it slips in nicely. So if you have to loosen your screws to get the other screws in cleanly, make sure you do that. So here again, we're going to do the 8s, followed by, also remember we need slack in the build frame. So we're just going to loosen both of these ever so slightly. So we're going to set that off to the side. We're going to put our 8 and then our 6. And then we're going to move that arm. Again, I know it's tricky, but I promise you it's well worth it. All right. And then we're going to move that arm, and we're going to take it and set it in place. And then again, we can use one of our screws. Doesn't matter which one you put in first. Just make sure we're not jamming it in there. All right, we got that one. And then we've got this one. Try not to drop your screwdriver on your electronics, not that I did. All right, so we've got 2 of them in place. I'm gonna go ahead and actually mount the front in a staggered position just because I think it's cool. So what we're gonna do here is I'm gonna actually put the arm at the very bottom, and then I'm gonna put the 6 mil, and then I'm going to put the 3 mil nothing, and then I'm going to put the 3 mil something, the 3 mil tab. All right, so again, got this screw here, got there, we got there, and we can go, there we go. All right. And then, oh, good thing I got an extra. So if you drop it, we'll do our M3. And then we can go do our last one over here. So arm plus 6 mil, plus 3 mil, plus 3 mil tab. Bada bing, bada boom. Now this is where you want to make sure your air unit is fully seated. When we get to the last one, it's where we're really trying to make sure all of the bits are where they need to be, right? So the air unit in particular is really all in the O3, if you have an O3 build, is really all we're looking at here in terms of once we get these screws just aligned. Whoa. All right. Oh, something else this just reminded me of, don't push on the press nuts. What I mean by that is when you get these screws, another important thing is not to jam them in there so hard that you push the riv nut out. That can be problematic. Okay, so something not right there. Oh, you know what's not right? My air unit. My air unit is sticking out. So this is where, again, we need to make sure the air unit is seated properly. So with everything nice and loose, you're going to get your hands in here and verify, and it's not. So what I need to do is I need to loosen some screws up here. Oh, wrong one. What you can't see is my air unit is sitting up on the lip of the mount there, and so I just need to loosen it enough that I can get it seated better in that print. There we go. So also make sure that that it's fitting before getting it in there. Now the other thing that's great about this is you actually can, without taking the whole frame apart necessarily, you could loosen this up and we can actually slip the whole thing out. So on this one, I just need to check, why is it not really fitting in that edge there? Looks like it's just, there it goes. All right. This is supposed to be a pretty tight fit. So again, if it's not fitting, try to make sure, there we go. You can really see like with the lines on this one. There we go. We got it nicely pushed in there. So now it's in there. So let's go ahead and get it back where it was supposed to go, and there it goes. So now we can start to tighten down the rest of our screws. Again, we don't really want to tighten them all the way. We're going to have to slip those standoffs into the front, so we want to make sure there's space for those. But it is supposed to compress down, so it is going to take us screwing in everything to compress that air unit down, but that air unit's in place. So now that we got that, this is where, like I said, we can go ahead and insert standoffs. Sorry about that. Into our prints, which you have 5 standoffs, you only need 4. We're going to take these, push them into our prints. By the way, heat is your friend. Use a heat gun if you have to. Warm these up just a little bit. And they go down in there nicely. I like to also use the back of my screwdriver. I actually also have an arbor press, which is probably the best way about going about this. So if you have an arbor press, that is absolutely the way to go. Also, don't push them into the side that's shiny. Push them into the opposite side, because the shiny side is the side that's on the printer's bed, and that will make it for a little bit tighter of a hole going in. So there may be a little bit of leftover support material. use your angle cutters for that, just to pull that material out, or if you see any small imperfections, you can trim them. And we then can mount the camera. So let's pull out. I know I said you wouldn't need this because honestly I wasn't planning on doing this, but since I had the air unit here, might as well, right? All right, so we can go from the outside. The outside of the mount is the part that it's curved flat to. So the curve goes on the inside. You should be able to pretty much tell that there's like a little bit of a recess for the cap of the screw. So this one is going to go on this side here. So we need to make sure our camera is associated with having a screw over there. Personally, I run one screw on all of my cameras, whether they're single or double screws cameras. I don't like running a second screw for lots of reasons, so up to you. Put however many screws in your camera as you want. I'm only going to do one. It's the way that I roll. Excuse me. Jeez. Push that in, Troy. All right. So again, the curved side, like this, that's the outside. This part that it's angled as an L, I don't know how to explain it. I'm trying to do my best here, guys. All right, so mount that. Bada bing, bada boom. Twist your wire up however you want, right? I like to twist my camera. Be careful not to twist the wire like inside the camera or at the connectors, but I like to twist it up a little bit so it fits nicely. And then tuck that guy in. And then here's where we actually do need those M3/8s. So we've got M3/8s here. And we start by screwing in the top one. We can go to the bottom after. Don't worry about that wire. Again, we'll get to poking all the wires in where they go. By the way, a little secret here. This is my first test fit of this full production frame. I've only ever test fit things in the printed model, so far so good. But if there's ever any issues and people feel like there's something that needs to be changed, we will consider making revisions, or obviously we will fix things if something's not right. But bada bing, bada boom. For your rear, I'm gonna go ahead and mount this one only with a GPS because I have the tabs on here. So once again, I'm going to push my standoffs in. But if I wanted to, I could install this double SMA right now, and I would do it underneath so I could have the antennas nice and tall. But my GPS mount, I'm going to go ahead and do it back here. Bada bing, bada boom. Again, I would have run my battery straps already, however I wanted them. So if you wanted a top mount battery, I would have already have done that. In this situation, I was going to run a bottom mount on this build if this was the way I was going to build it. So I got that standoff stuck. There we go. All right. Flip it over. And here's where we can really admire the nice flush bottom, no nuts, no screw heads. In a perfect world, we would have recessed the press nuts fully into the carbon. The problem with that is to have nice, good, solid press nuts. I would have had to thicken up that bottom plate way too much. So wasn't looking forward to doing that. Because I didn't want to go thicker than what we already did, which was 3 millimeters to make things nice and stiff and accommodate all the flush mount stuff. But bada bing, bada boom. We got all of our standoffs in. The standoffs are nice and tight, so now it's all about going around and let's tighten up these riv nuts or these main arm bolts. Don't go ham on them and go crazy. Just get them buttoned up and tight. I wouldn't use Loctite. I would just regularly check my screws. If you want to use Loctite, feel free to use Loctite. But you know, Loctite to me in these situations is just going to cause more damage over time of opening and like undoing and redoing the screws. You end up with just a difficult time, including stripping things, which you don't want to do. But look at that. We have the Chase frame, and it is stagger set, right? All right. It's got an air unit mounted in there. Again, don't worry about that. We could tuck away that wire. Probably shouldn't use metal, but bada bing, bada boom. You've got your heat sink there, air unit. Everything is secure. That air unit's not going nowhere. It is nice and locked in place. And that's that. If I'm going to use these over here, then we would go ahead and, again, you have some excess screws for these things. We would go ahead and mount this way. All right, and then we could come over here and mount this. Oh, where did it go? There it goes. Oh, there's a little bit of support in this hole, so you're going to want to pull that out. And we'll try to make sure we clean all of our prints, but it's tough work sometimes to get every single bit and not forget a little piece. So push those screws into there. And we are done there. All right. So there we go. The frame's built out. Everything technically would have been installed in there and ready to go. Again, we've got our battery lander, all the different things. So yeah, super stoked with how this guy came out. I hope you are too. We look forward to seeing everybody's configurations and how you end up building yours out and what you do with it. Oh, sorry, while we're here, last bit. I put this in here, these two screws to mount the camera because it was easy. This is where we would go with our GoPro mount. And so for that, here's the mount, here's the screws. We just take these screws and bada bing, bada boom. There's one. There's two. We are good to go. Fly safe, fly smart. Just fly. Peace.